Hey folks, Phil Gallagher here for Daily Death and Taxes. Again, we are playing the White Weenie deck this week. Check out the deck tech on Monday if you need to figure out what's going on with this. We have a very mana-heavy hand here, so I think I'm going to go ahead and ship this one back. And then I'll keep this one. I think this is pretty good. Probably just tossing back one of the planes. Let's toss back the snow-covered plains. Opponent's got an interesting little like dragon or drake over there with some real big eyes. Non-basic, please. Non-basic, please. Nice. I think we're actually relatively well suited to take down a Delver deck. Goodbye, land. Hello, 2-1. We'll get an end of turn mom, and then the Hawks cometh. Nice. It will be an interesting question as to whether or not we actually wasteland our opponent. Because, like, I'm going to have a lot of 2-drops to put in. But I don't think you pass up wasteland here. We're potentially playing against Grixis Delver. It theoretically could be Death Shadow Delver, but like them getting 2 Underground Seas in a row is a little weird if that's actually the case. I'll just attack in. What's the worst that could happen, friend? Oh wow, it's actually happening. One, two, 3 little birds. Okay. I think I'm just comfortable trading 1 for 1 here instead of just tapping my mom. I could try to take them both out. It's a little greedy, though. I think we're just gonna go ahead and play around a removal spell here. Just take the trade. Like I have 4 more cards that are coming in here. Let's go ahead and cast a Hawk pre-combat. A fatal push. Sure. So again, we know about the removal spell, right? So we will just go ahead and trade a body, not tap the mom. Ooh. Smallish Tarmogoyf. Not a problem. Don't need to play around days. I could just hold this land. And just bluff that I have another card. But I don't know that that's actually necessary. So my mom probably dies in the next turn cycle to the fatal push. So I might just try to close this game out. Give pro green, bash in for 3, put my opponent to 11, let mom die, potentially attack for 5 after that, and just, like, aggro this game out. Otherwise, like, on my opponent's turn, I can just, like, mom, block, self-protect, draw out the fatal push. The Tarmogoyf isn't that threatening. It's probably not getting much bigger than that. It's just walling my Dryad Militant. Let's get aggressive. So since I've wastelanded my opponent twice already, I don't necessarily know that they're going to have another colored land drop. And if they don't have another colored land drop, I don't super care about their turn. Like, opponent can fatal push the Dryad Militant pre-combat. Or no, I already have a creature in there. So we'll go ahead and leave this at 2. Send them in. So the Dryad Militant is walled by Tarmogoyf from here on out. So I have my opponent dead in the air in 2 turns. Sure. So this is the one that doesn't have any yet. What's my 2-drop versus 3-drop ratio? My 2-drop ratio is so much higher. So we'll say no here. Nice. So we have our opponent pretty darn stuck on mana. If I think my opponent has nothing, I can attempt to attack in for lethal this turn. I don't know if that's good, but it is something that can occur. So my opponent can have like an Abrupt Decay, a Fatal Push, a Brazen Borrower. I think there's enough things that my opponent can have that it is not good for me to just make the suicide attack here. Because I can make the same sort of attack again next turn, and it's just so much more likely to be lethal. Oh, sorry, I saw it and there was just no text in the box, and I thought it was weird. Sure. All right, pretty happy with where we're at. My opponent's cantrips are not actually all that great here. Like, the time that it costs them to do this is pretty rough. Alright, so what do we have for a Bug Delver deck? So more Graveyard Hate is probably good. Council's Judgment is probably good. Prelate on 2 is okay. Recruiters are probably good. Spirit's awkward. So let's figure out how I'm going to play this game. So, like, I definitely want these, and I probably need the ability to grind through whatever my opponent is doing. It occurs to me now that I didn't put Swords to Plowshares in the deck list. I was wondering why I felt like I had so much room. But this is fine. We'll figure that out. So anytime where I don't have Rest in Peace, Hallowed Spirit Keeper is probably very, 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 very good. Unless it gets Oko'd. A lot of my stuff is probably going to die. Getting enough devotion probably isn't happening. And this is very bad against Tarmogoyf. If I do that, though, it means I only have like 2 answers to a Plague Engineer. That's not exactly amazing. But I do have an odd amount of creature type diversity, so maybe Plague Engineer isn't like as good against me as I think it might be. Maybe trim one of those. And this. And then think about the Hallowed Spirit Keeper. It's probably just so bad to bring it in at the same time I bring in Rest in Peace, though. This one's gonna be a nope from me. This one's fine. I think I'm gonna get rid of the second Mom. I'm going to go ahead and lead on Mom. Best draw right now is probably just a Squadron Hawk. It makes the Force of Virtue that's in my hand just so much better. A really long pause from our opponent. Sure. Sure. I mean, that's the draw. So, do I just cast it? My opponent paused for a long time last time, which kind of makes me think they have a counterspell. So I think I just want to wait one more turn on this. The issue with that, though, is that if my opponent does have the counterspell, and they also have, like, land and can make an Oko, I'm going to be so woefully behind if I don't play the Squadron Hawk and then follow up with Force of Virtue. Accordingly, I think I'm going to do this. Oh, well, so much for that pause last turn. There we go. Hawk's Astral Recall is a success. Land Plague Engineer and then me responding with Force of Virtue is pretty hot. I would enjoy that. I don't want them to plan their brainstorm knowing that the Force of Virtue is there. So, like, this technically gives them a chance to look for more answers to it, but I think it is just correct to play out, or to let them play out the brainstorm and then proceed from there. All right. I'm going to pitch a Hawk to do this, because I can play this and a Hawk or Remorseful Cleric on my turn. JK, I'm going to play that Judge's Familiar instead. And then let's play this Cleric. It gives me the option to nuke the graveyard if I need to shrink the Tarmogoyfs. It also just has one more innate power. So my opponent attacks me for 6 down to 11. I attack them for 7 down to 10. I will probably present lethal before my opponent. Why on earth is someone playing Dread of Night in this metagame? D&T is very bad. Like, technically that does stuff against the Mentor package out of whatchamacallit? Breach. Alright. Hmm. And that's resolving due to Judge's Familiar. I should have attacked first because of that, but, you know. Plague Engineer on Bird gets a 2-for-1 here. 3-for-1. What a 2-for-1. Okay. I think you have literally no reason to do that in your upkeep, but sure. So let's see. I can send in all these creatures, and the rest in peace is gone now. So they could block with a Tarmogoyf to grow the other Tarmogoyfs. But I think that's fine. They can also wasteland themselves if they want to grow a Tarmogoyf. But similarly, yikes, you know. Let's take a look. Are there any hawks? No hawks. Again, Plague Engineer on Bird. Pretty good. Something that can remove my Force of Virtue from play is also brutal. Like a Brazen Borrower or an Assassin's Trophy. Yep. That sucks. That's cool. That was just a 6-for-1. So I can sacrifice my Remorseful Cleric to nuke the Judge's Familiar from my graveyard, but then that doesn't matter because all the rest of these are still going there anyway. Son of a bitch. That's super frustrating. So I can block 1, nuke my own graveyard, take 2, still die. Alright. That's very frustrating. So now that I know about the Dread of Nights, I need to keep more +1/+1 things in there. And maybe I just need more things that can jump block a Tarmogoyf profitably. This is only kind of okay against the Dread of Night. think I'll junk that and 1 recruiter. The recruiter is essentially just the 5th copy of Squadron Hawk in this deck. It's also possible that I should Sanctum Prelate on 2. Keep. You can have a long discussion about which one of these you're supposed to lead on. I think I'm going to lead on Judge's Familiar so that I don't get my Squadron Hawk Thoughtseized or Force of Willed. Because my Squadron Hawk is much more valuable than every other card in my hand. I think I am going to go ahead and pitch this here, though. That way I can attack for 2 with the Judge's Familiar. Your Brainstorm is fine. My opponent forces. It's interesting. I think I'm supposed to take this. But it's super awkward if they have another force. Draw 3 cards. Yeah, library is fine here. I'm going to aggro you pretty quickly. Like, my mom may even just be turning sideways, if I'm being totally honest here. Unsure. But yeah, when I put this list together, I was expecting to play against exactly 0 copies of Dread of Night. I can tell you that for sure. Because there's so many X1s in this deck list that this deck just would not be viable in a time where D&T was actually popular. Largely because it would just lose the regular D&T matchup too, right? Like, because they have equipment and we don't. Mom has been decayed. So next turn, it is theoretically possible to see bounce this with 2 mana and play Dread of Night. So I think I'm just going to throw this out there and just crash in for 6. The quicker I lower my opponent's life total, the less likely they are to actually draw a real card with Sylvan Library. And this line also just tries to play around a Dread of Night effect ruining my life. We're still presenting lethal next turn, although we're not presenting lethal next turn in the air. Alright, you have a Plague Engineer. Wow, that's an aggressive Thoughtseize. So I very, very much have lethal next turn. I don't think I'm supposed to attack with the Banelish Marshal, again, to just like keep the other Anthem effect around. But I do think I'm flopping everything that I own onto the board here. Just to make it so that removal spells don't beat me. And so that the only thing that beats me is an absolutely absurd sequence of cards from my opponent. Like, my opponent could remove Force of Virtue and Banelish Marshal, and that would give them a path to victory. But otherwise, I've gone wide enough that unless they can answer both of these, I don't think my opponent can get there. Alright, so they have wastelanded themselves and killed the Banelish Marshal just to show they could. I respected GG's opponent, and we'll be back tomorrow.